Let's install Daytona on Linode. First, head over to GitHub to the installer repo, link in the description. You'll have everything you need, docs and code. You're going to need a couple of things. You're going to want to pick an instance that has 4 cores and 16 gigs of RAM at a minimum. I would probably double that if you're going to have multiple people running on this all at the same time. You're also going to need to have ports open. I'll show you how to do that with the firewall, but just to explain what you need 22 for SSH so that you can SSH and actually do the install. You're going to need 80 and 443 for the web application. You're going to need 30,000 for Daytona to SSH to the workspaces. You're also going to want to use Ubuntu 2204 as your operating system. You're going to need to have a DNS domain for this, one that either a subdomain or a top level domain, whatever you want that you have handy. And you're going to need to be able to add records. So point whatever the VM is to this domain, but also to be able to add text records, because we're going to use Let's Encrypt under the covers to do the TLS setup. So you're going to need domain and an A record for domain.com, whatever it is you choose, and star.domain.com. And you're going to want to point that to the VM that you create. You're also going to need that domain name for when you go to set up the OAuth app. I'm going to use GitHub. You can use GitLab or Bitbucket, whatever you want. Let's go over to the dashboard and do a couple of things. We're going to do the firewall first. So create a new firewall. I've already created one, but you're going to want those 4 ports, 22, 80, 443, and 30,000. Once you have that, you can save it and then go and create an instance. Pick Ubuntu, whatever region's closest to you. I picked this dedicated instance. You're going to want to use dedicated resources because there's lots of, especially if you're using multiple users, you're going to want to have dedicated CPUs. And I think that 16 to 32, 16 cores and 32 gigs is a nice mix so that you can put 4 to 5 engineers on this pretty easily. It's a nice size in terms of the instance itself. Go ahead and set it to whatever you want. I picked Daytona. Set a root password and add your SSH key. Make sure that you assign the firewall that you created just a second ago, and then you're ready to go. Once you have all of that, you're going to want to SSH. You're going to want to do the copy and the clone and head over to SSH. I've got the setup ready to go. It's going to ask you to accept the EULA. You should read the EULA. Basically, personal use or trying it out is fine, but if you're going to use it for commercial use, call us. And then you're not going to have to do too much, but you are going to have to do the DNS setup. So what domain are you going to use? I'm going to use demo-cloud.xyz. And also, what's your OAuth setup? So I've got these secrets set on side, and I'll go ahead and grab this. So here's the records that we've got. So demo-cloud.xyz pointing to the instance, and star.demo-cloud to the instance. And now you're going to add the 2 text records. So every DNS host is slightly different. Some of them will have you put 2 different text records, one for each of these 2 records that we need. But like Route 53 on AWS actually makes you have 1 record with multiple lines. So it really just depends on what DNS host you're using, but in the end, you're going to want to have both of these records. And before you do anything, use this handy tool, the toolbox at Google Apps, which is going to let you see if these DNS records have propagated. So you can see that I've got a couple. I've got the old ones, but I'm looking for the new ones. So QT and PC. So there's the PC one, and there's the QT one. The fact that I've got extras from the last couple of times I've run this doesn't matter. You just want to see those 2. Then you'll be able to get started. Now that's all you need to do The rest of it is going to happen over the course of the next 12 to 20 minutes. And when this is done, you'll be able to log in with your GitHub credentials and launch a workspace. Now, nobody wants to watch the grass grow, so I'll come back when it's done. All right, install's done. Let's go see what happened. We're going to go to the browser. We're going to go back to demo-cloud.xyz. We're going to log in with GitHub. And now we've got Daytona. A couple different things you could do now. A couple different ways to start workspaces. You could go ahead and create one. We've got some templates, but the one I'm going to use is, let's look for Simple Flask. Now, when I create something this way, it's going to use the web IDE. It's easy, simple, but for day-to-day, if you're going to use this all the time, you can just use your local VS Code or JetBrains install that you've already got. There's an extension, you can add it, and then it feels local, but you're still using your already configured, already loved VS Code or JetBrains. You don't have to use the browser. The browser is just an easy way if you need to make a quick change or just try something out. It's just a super easy way to get started. It's also a super easy way to do a demo. So what's happening now is we are pulling down that GitHub repository onto a clean, fresh dev container instance. And so that repo has a dev container file in it, which describes everything that you need to get going. And matter of fact, let's take a second and just go to GitHub real quick and check that out. So we're going to go to GitHub, Metcalf C, Simple Flask. Inside of here is the dev container. I'm going to use Python 3.11. I'm also going to configure the VS Code instance, either the web browser or the local one. And I'm going to set up which interpreter to use, which linter to use, which formatter to use. I'm going to tell it what extensions to use. Now, that's pretty cool. But on top of that, we can keep going. If we see port 5000, which is where I'm going to run this application, we're automatically going to open a preview window. And as part of the workflow, when this instance is created, we're going to go ahead and run pip install. And when the user attaches to it, we're going to go ahead and run that application on port 5000. So if we come over here, we'll see that there's the preview, and everything that we need for this is just up and running. So if you think about that, in less than 30 minutes, we created an instance on Linode, installed Daytona, and got my whole dev environment up and running for the Simple Flask app faster than I could have done any of this from a clean install on a Mac. So that's the easiest way to get started with Daytona on Linode.